Well, today is March 1st, 2013, and I sit here with Dr. Ed Taub. We are in Sarasota attending a meeting at the same time, and we took the opportunity to do the interview with you for European Journal of Behavior Analysis. Welcome to Sarasota, Dr. Taub, and it's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you, Eva.
We worked together for a period of time in Tübingen, Germany in 1998, I think it was, on an interesting project.
About then, yeah.
Yeah, and you have done such wonderful research at your university, and we very much would like to hear about that. And so this is the occasion for this interview.
Okay, well, thank you.
And I think we will proceed so that we basically read the text for optimal interest to the viewer. So I'll read the first question here. Your training is in behavior analysis. When did you start? Where did you study? Who were your mentoring professors? And can you name some of your fellow graduate students who may be familiar to behavior analysts? And what role did your mentors play in forming your subsequent career choices?
Well, these are things that I have thought about for a long, long time, and they bring up some very warm memories and pleasant memories. So I'm really pleased to talk about this. In the first 2 years of my undergraduate study, I majored in biology. In my junior year, I became interested in the study of philosophy, and while I enjoyed the intellectual challenge of the type of logical analysis in this area from the very beginning, I found the inability to come to a conclusive resolution of issues unsettling. My dissatisfaction reached a decisive peak while taking a course in ethics of all things, in which we were assigned to read an essay by Henri Bergson on laughter and by Hugo van Münsterberg on play. I was very impressed by both articles. They were equally brilliant in their reasoning, and yet they came to diametrically opposed conclusions on many issues. And that gave me, given their equal brilliance, almost literally a queasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew that it would not be possible for me to spend the rest of my life working on problems that had no clear answers, and recognized that scientific psychology was in effect experimental philosophy. Well, I thought that I had come up with an original discovery, a discovery that perhaps thousands of other students had made as an original discovery before me, but for me it was life-altering. I switched my major to psychology in my senior year and later entered school, graduate school in psychology at Columbia University. And I found the atmosphere at Columbia absolutely intoxicating. I was introduced to radical behaviorism in courses by Fred Keller and Nathaniel Schoenfeld, and knew immediately that I had found a home. Fred Keller became my mentor, and I carried out my first experiment for him. One of the most vivid experiences of my career occurred in the course of carrying out that experiment. The results came out to be apparently contrary to his published conclusion about the role of superstitious behavior in the development of the temporal discrimination that underlies effective behavior on a differential reinforcement of a low rate of response, or DRL, schedule of reinforcement. I was really upset by this. I was genuinely concerned, and I could not bring myself to tell him. I just couldn't. So weeks went by, and I avoided him in the hall. And finally, two of my graduate student friends who knew about the experiment, Stuart Margulies and Sherry Spieth, who didn't know about my reluctance to tell Dr. Keller about the results of the experiment, told him about it independently. Then Dr. Keller saw me in the hall, and he asked me to come down to his office, and at his request, I told him about the results of the experiment. He asked me first why I hadn't told him about the results, and I said that their apparent contradiction of his explanation made me very uncomfortable. He asked me, why was that? And he said that this was a normal part of doing research. And if a researcher didn't understand that he would be wrong a certain percentage of time, then he was in the wrong business. And then he went on to say, I want you to remember something for the rest of your career. Whatever you do in your career, always call the data the way they lie. And I'm fairly certain that those were his exact words. I remember them now as clearly as I did after our meeting. I learned that lesson well. And perhaps some would say that I learned it possibly too well.
That's an interesting background.
There was not enough space in Schermerhorn Hall, which was the building in which the psychology department was housed, to permit first-year graduate students to conduct research. My first experiment was carried out over a summer, and as soon as the other graduate students involved in thesis and dissertation research returned from vacation, the space I had been using was preempted for someone else's degree research. Well, I understood that. But I had come to graduate school to do research, and consequently, I took the only research job that the department had a notice for at the time. Thus, fate intervenes to change the course of one's life. The job was in a department of experimental neurology in a research institute at what was then called the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital. Now it's called Kingsbrook Jewish Medical Center, where I began a years-long series of somatosensory deafferentation experiments with monkeys. We studied the role of somatosensory feedback, including proprioceptive feedback, in movement and learning in monkeys. The primary new method that I contributed to this area of research was the use of the operant training techniques that I had learned about at Columbia. Well, I dropped out of Columbia and did not receive my doctorate from that school. It took me a long time to finally get my degree at NYU, New York University. During those years, I continued primate deafferentation research first in Brooklyn, and in 1970, Dr. Keller was instrumental in getting the Institute for Behavioral Research, or IBR, in Silver Spring, Maryland, to invite me to set up a primate laboratory. And I was very pleased and learned a great deal from the opportunity that I had to interact with such distinguished figures who were at IBR as Israel Golddiamond, Harold Cohn, Stanley Pliskoff, Mac Parsons, Joe Brady, Jack Findley, and many other investigators in Joe Brady and David McKay Rioch's Division of Neuropsychiatry at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. And that brings me to the end of the first part of my checkered career.
It's very interesting, and it's nice of you to mention all the people you worked with in the past at that time.